Welcome back to the Mainstream. John, how you going?
Very well, Dan. What have you been doing? How's Adelaide?
Well, we'll start off with our favourite, hugely popular segment, Adelaide Watch.
Now that you don't have Metallica, AC/DC and racing cars.
No, it's all quieted down, but I come bearing good news once again.
More good news.
From Adelaide across the border, which is that we are putting Christ back into Christmas.
So you've had Father Christmas in Christmas pageants.
Yes.
And
with no welcome to country.
No welcome to country. And now Christianity's roaring back.
Roaring back. So I was walking past, walking through Victoria Square.
That's the main square.
That's the main square. And big, beautiful Christmas tree. And out the front of it, there was the nativity scene with baby Jesus in the nativity scene. So I don't know if it was there last year or not, but I don't remember seeing it. But I can say that Christmas is becoming unwokeified, at least in Adelaide.
Did it look to you like the bystanders knew what the nativity scene was?
Well, that's a good question, John. Not sure yet, but one step at a time. All
right, so
I'm getting there.
The good news about Adelaide keeps on coming, so I'm coming to Adelaide.
Well, I don't know if you'd be welcome, John, to be honest. We don't want to Victorianise our city, so you might have to go into some kind of quarantine for a couple of weeks.
Well, I was thinking, if not Adelaide, Corowa.
Corowa?
Or
Why is
Mulgala. Well,
choice.
Important choice. So Federation Council, which is the local council in that part of beautiful Australia on the Murray, last week, I think it was, voted to only have one flag.
Which
council events, the flag that unites us all, that represents all Australians, Dan.
Which flag's that, John? The pride flag?
It's the flag of our country.
That's my pride flag.
So it's very exciting.
It is exciting.
So I can choose between Adelaide or Mulwala, but not Melbourne.
Well, there's not many flags here in Melbourne, unfortunately.
No, yeah, and they would have been defaced or torn down or ripped up or burned.
Yes.
They were the Australian flag.
Indeed, John. But one thing today is the polling that's just come out.
So it's about modern Australia. So we're constantly told that the political party, especially the Liberal Party, must represent modern Australia. And Susan Lee says that she wants the Liberal Party to be where modern Australians are. Where are Australians, Dan?
Well, I can tell you where they are on the issue of immigration. So this was a poll published not in the terrible right-wing News Corp, not by the IPA.
Didn't appear on Sky After Dark.
Not on Sky After Dark. It was published in the Age and the SMH, and it was about immigration. And listen to these numbers. Okay, listen to these numbers. So 61% have said that we should restrict our permanent migration intake only to those who have skills. Now, I looked at the data the other day. Only 17% of all of those who came in FY24 had skills, were under the skills visa. Right, 40% were foreign students. Okay, so that's a massive cut. Now, check this one out. Do you think that we should pause immigration until our housing situation has caught up? Pause it. 64% of Australians want to pause. Only 13% do not.
So this is modern Australia.
2/3 of Australians want none, a pause on immigration coming into the country. And this last one goes to cultural values. Should our immigration intake focus on alike countries, for example, those where English is commonly spoken or have similar laws and customs? 54% support that, only 16% oppose it. So that is very significant. I think it goes to the unease that Australians have with the current immigration intake. The political class has refused to debate this issue for years, but I actually think immigration in its economic and cultural manifestations is the number one issue facing our country right now.
And so this was front page news?
Well, I think they buried it, didn't they?
Well, I saw it yesterday on the Age website, and looking at it today, I couldn't find it. And I scrolled through a number of pages and got there eventually. So the Liberal Party is going to be releasing its principles on immigration in the next couple of weeks, I think it is.
I think this week, yeah.
So what does this say for the Liberal Party?
Well, I think they're going to go hard on immigration, to be honest. I think if you look back, we beat The Voice, we beat misinformation, we beat net zero, which is now dying. Next year is the year we're going to beat this mass immigration program. I think what the coalition will do is some principles that they're outlined where they want to cut and they want to have people come in with a genuine values test. Now, how you enforce a values test is unclear, right? So that needs to be worked through. But I think there's going to be probably next year, towards the end of next year, there'll be a very significant policy in that area. And I just think Australians are fed up with it. The numbers have surged. It's the biggest increase since Federation. And I've always said there's 3 conditions for a successful program. It has to be planned for, it has to have the consent of the community, and it has to be targeted towards economic need. None of those 3 criteria have been met at all, and instead it's been run, at least in part, based on political considerations.
And then Australians also ask, well, if immigration is so good and so important for the economy, why does Australia have the most rapidly falling living standards in the OECD? Why is our per capita growth going backwards? And per capita growth is the only measure of growth we should use.
Yeah, well, 10 out of the 13 quarters that this government's been in, we've had negative per capita growth. Right, it's insane.
So, and this is what has to be talked about, and this is what has to be debated if we are going to continue to have an immigration program on the sort of level or anywhere near the sorts of levels that we've had.
Yeah, but the only way you're going to be able to cut it is by cutting the international students, because they're the single biggest cohort coming into the country. The universities will obviously oppose it. Treasury will oppose it because they'll say it's going to tank the economy. The government will oppose it because they carry favour with the universities. Big business opposes it because they're able to use these students as cheap labour and they don't have to train Australians for jobs. So every single sectional interest in society is going to oppose it. But that was the whole point of the Liberal Party. The whole point of the Liberal Party was to take the issues where a majority of people want action, but the government won't act because sectional interests that control the government won't allow them to act. So the whole point of the Liberal Party was to take these exact issues where the forgotten people don't have a voice in debate and to take that on as to be custodians of those issues.
You mean speak for the mainstream?
Speak for the mainstream, John.
Exactly.
Hi, thanks for watching the new podcast with John and myself. Hey, did you know that about 70% of those who watch this podcast are not yet subscribed to the IPA's YouTube channel? Do us a favour, hit subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of the action. And while you're at it, click the link on the screen to go to the Institute of Public Affairs website where you can sign up for the latest news and research from the IPA. Now, back to the chat. Speaking of another survey we've been looking at, the Australian Election Survey.
Very significantly, yes, the Australian Election Survey is conducted by academics at ANU and Griffith University. It's been conducted every federal election since 1987. And it's valuable because it allows us to track changing attitudes and sentiment back to 1987. It's the most comprehensive assessment of political attitudes post-election. This survey was done of 2,070 respondents. The ANU Griffith survey or team also undertook the Voice survey after the referendum, and interestingly and importantly, of course, their results coincided with the IPA's own work and our own research, which was actually a bigger poll, which found that the main reason the Voice was defeated was that Australians didn't want to be divided.
So I thought it was just a technical debate about changing some words in the Constitution and that it was legally risky. You're telling me that wasn't the reason Australians voted no?
No, Australians voted no on a matter of principle and philosophical belief, and of course, this is something that we've talked lots about. People say, well, Australians are pragmatic, Australians are practical. Well, we often are, but when something as big as the Voice comes around, we identified, and Australians did, 60% of Australians voted no. And that was exactly the IPA's position and the position of people like Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine, and that was proved to be the case both by the IPA survey and the ANU survey. So this Australian election survey outcome, as you say, has just come out. A couple of key things, and we'll talk about it. I know that you've been looking at it closely as well. For me, a few headline figures were Peter Dutton was incredibly unpopular. Yeah. And we can talk about Why? And he was, in fact, the most unpopular leader, Labor or Liberal, since the survey began in 1987. Climate change was not a significant issue. It was only regarded as the most important issue to 5% of voters. And again, if we're talking about the political parties reflecting mainstream Australia, reflecting modern Australia, immigration was regarded as more significant and more important than climate change. A point that has been picked up by some of the media is that the Liberal Party, that for a long time had the mantle of better economic managers, lost that to the Labor Party. And a claim was made that this survey reveals, as have other surveys, that young people are no longer tending towards the right as they grow older. We'll talk about that. I think the picture is a little bit more complicated than that. And finally, and this was a point identified to us by our colleague here, Kian Hussey at the IPA, when the survey asks people to rank on a scale of left to right how left-wing or right-wing they regard the political parties. And again, you can go back to the 80s to look at how perceptions of the political parties have changed. So the Labor Party, if we go back the last 5 elections to 2013, is regarded by most people as now slightly more left-wing than where it was in 2013. The claim from the media, the claim from the pundits, the claim from the Liberal moderates is that the Liberal Party is now more right-wing, it is more conservative, it is outside of the mainstream, it is not reflecting modern Australia, and it is costing votes. In fact, this AES survey identifies that the Liberal Party since 2013 is regarded as being less conservative than it was in 2013. So over the last 5 elections, the Liberal Party has gradually drifted to the left, which completely defeats the argument that the Liberal Party's supposed right-wing leanings are now making it unelectable.
The reason the Liberal Party did so bad at the election is it wasn't conservative enough. That's what this survey shows. And so just to drill into that, because I think that's, for me, the single most important finding. And just to repeat that, the Dutton-led Liberal Party was not perceived to be more right-wing than previous Liberal parties going back 10 years.
Correct. It was, in fact, regarded as less right-wing than Tony Abbott in 2013.
Yeah. So if you look at what they do is they have it from 0 to 10, a ranking. So 0 is extremely left-wing, 10 is extremely right-wing. So in 2025, so this election, they ranked it as 6.3, the coalition being 6.3 out of 10, which is the same as 2022, down slightly from 2019 and 6.5. The highest was 6.6 in 2004 and 2007. So it's become slightly, since then.
So Malcolm Turnbull, the pin-up boy for moderates and the Liberal left and Teals and the ABC and the Guardian, the coalition, or the Liberal Party under him in 2016 was ranked at 6.3. Exactly the same as Peter Dutton was ranked in 2020.
That terrible, what did you describe as, a right-wing thug?
Troglodyte, I think, is also been a term used.
Well, just on that, right?
Gosh, isn't evidence difficult when you refer to facts? Doesn't that just tend to blow up things?
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, there's a few things there, but I want to just stick to the ranking of I guess, political ideology.
Of right-wing troglodytes.
Right. So there's also another question which is similar to that, which is how a party's own voters. So that one you just talked about was all voters.
All voters.
So this question goes to a party's self-reported ideology. So if you're a Liberal voter, this is your own self-reported ideology. Now, these are the limitation of these kind of questions is it is very subjective, right? So you've got to take into account its subjective nature, but nonetheless, this is how you rank yourself on that scale. So Greens voters are 2.9. So remember, 0 is extremely right-wing.
Did you know it's extremely left-wing?
Left-wing, sorry, yep. One Nation is 6.9, so 10 is extremely right-wing. So Nationals are at 5.8. Liberals are at 6.4. So Liberal voters self-identify as more right-wing than Nationals voters, right? And Labor is 4.4. So what this means is Liberal voters are much more to the right than Labor voters are to the left. So why is the political system getting dragged to the left then? Doesn't that suggest that it should be getting dragged to the
Because
right?
our leaders are not reflecting either the community's views, the public views, or the views of the people who vote for them. And again, I mentioned that Peter Dutton was regarded as the most unpopular leader of a political party since polling like this began. What's interesting is that Anthony Albanese was liked by Labor voters and relatively well liked by the public at large. Peter Dutton was not liked by coalition voters. He didn't have anywhere near the same regard or wasn't held in the same regard as Labor voters held Albanese.
I think this goes to this is further evidence of what has become a bit of a trope, but is true, which is that you have to get your base on side first. That is job number one. You have to get your own voters to like you. If your own voters don't like you, you are not going to win. So even, former leaders who weren't necessarily that popular with the public at large, Tony Abbott didn't have high likability. John Howard often did not have high likability.
Well, on that point, in 1998, the election, one of the elections that John Howard won, Kim Beazley was far more popular than John Howard.
And voters also believe that Kim Beazley did a far better job in the debates.
That's right.
If you look at that. But the base, if you want to call it that, backed in both of those leaders. You have to lock them in first for many reasons. One is that's where you get your volunteers from. That's where you get your fundraising from. That's where you get the nuts and bolts of the party membership from. So if they're not fired up, there is absolutely no way you're going to fire up the rest of the country. And this is the problem with the argument that, don't worry about them because in a compulsory two-party system, they have to vote anyway. So even if they vote One Nation, they're going to preference you. It doesn't work because that ignores the critical role that a party infrastructure plays in a candidate getting elected.
And one of the things that the survey identifies is that increasingly community activism is going to become more important. So less and less people are getting their information about elections from television, from the mainstream media. They are getting it from social media and they're getting it from personal human contact, which is, of course, going back to how elections were run some 50 or 60 years ago. It's the mobilising motto for the Teals and the so-called community independents. And the Liberal Party seems to be losing that entirely. And talking about things that the Liberal Party is losing, as I mentioned, the Labor Party was regarded as better economic managers, and this has been a question that's perplexed some commentators. So yes, at one level, of course, the Labor Party went into the 2025 election promising lower income taxes than the Liberal Party, and a crazy decision, and we'll talk about that later on because Niki Savva has explored how that came to be in her new book. But I would argue there's something deeper going on which reflects our changing attitudes to economics and budgets and to the role of government support in our lives, which is that increasingly, as we know, with 50% of the Australian population dependent in some form on government support and welfare of some sort, that increasingly economic management is taken as a proxy for who will look after me the best, who will provide me with that social safety net. And one of my key criticisms of the Liberal Party since COVID basically is that they haven't come to terms with the demand of the population for security, stability, income support, which is important during a cost of living crisis. And again, you can tell from this survey that relatively few of the public blame the Labor Party and its decisions for the cost of living crisis.
Yep.
But what they want in a cost of living crisis is income support. They want rebates. They hope for cash in the hand to make their life that little bit easier. And this reflects a challenge which I don't think the Liberal Party is anywhere near understanding, that the idea that the public is drifting to the left, again, isn't quite borne out. I think you can mount the argument that the public is drifting to the left economically, but culturally is moving to the right, which we can discuss. And you can see there's one question that demonstrates this in the question that's asked to the respondents at every election time was, do you agree or disagree with the comment that high tax makes people unwilling to work? So in 1998, 76% of respondents said, yes, high taxes generally does make people less unwilling to work or less willing to work. In 2022, the last time that question was asked, that number was 48%. So those who disagree with that statement, in 1998 it was 10%. Now a quarter of people disagree with the statement that high tax makes people unwilling to work. So for me that means we have got a community accepting of high taxes, accepting of massive involvement in the economy, accepting the tax and welfare system that is basically having government grow as part of our lives, but which is providing security, and a coalition that says we believe in a smaller public service, we believe in lower taxes, we believe in you spending your own money, is increasingly out of kilter with where the Australian public is at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, you use the word security, which I think is the main term, and I think people feel ill at ease with the vagaries of day-to-day life. And I mean, one of the great examples of where I think the coalition should be going in this space, if you look at like childcare and family policy is a great example of that. So a classical Liberal argument would basically be that, if you look at the data, it was something like $16 billion the federal government spent on direct childcare subsidies. That went to about 1 million families, right? So that's $16,000 per family. But as a family, you don't see that $16,000, right? It gets funneled through the system. So the fees that you pay are lower than they otherwise would be because the subsidy goes to the provider, not to you as the user. Now, the classical Liberal argument would be, well, there shouldn't be government providing support of that. Now, I don't agree with that. If it's already going to be there in place, wouldn't it be better to direct that directly to the family, to provide the financial support to the family rather than to the childcare provider for families to
Or maybe support mothers and fathers to stay at home.
Well, that could be used
or take a break from work, exactly, which they can't do at the moment.
No. So I think that's where that's going, because people still need the stability. And one of the reasons you have this is because even only a couple of generations ago, it was common for people to have extended families that they lived with, so cousins and aunties and uncles who could look after the kids. But we don't have that to the same extent anymore. So you've got mum and dad raising 2 or 3 kids. They obviously need some kind of support, and the only practical way they can get it is actually from government now. So I don't think that's a good thing or a healthy thing, but it's the simple reality of what people confront on a day-to-day basis. Plus, everybody has to work all the time to pay down their obscenely high mortgages as well. Now, again, I don't think that's a good thing, but if you talk to people how they are, that's...
And the Labor Party says, we will help you.
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party basically said, well, they play me too, but no one believes the Liberal Party will help them the same way that the Labor Party will. When they asked what were the key election issues for people. And again, there's a caveat because the responses that people provide are not unprompted. They give them a bunch of categories to reply to. Cost of living was absolutely number 1, but healthcare was number 2.
Yeah.
And this is the genius of the Labor campaign, where they presented an argument which was that Peter Dutton is building hugely expensive nuclear power stations that will never be delivered, and we're providing Medicare rebates and bulk billing.
Yeah. People want to know if they get sick, they'll be taken care of.
That's
right. That's basically what it comes down to. The other thing, interestingly, just on the nuclear power argument, it to me demonstrates a classic policy issue. And I think you're seeing it here in Victoria when they talk about debt and the Victorian Liberals want to have a debt commission, which we could get into. But if you're going to go big on something, you must give people a lot of detail. Right? So you either go big, big policy,
go home.
You go home.
Or you lose your seat.
Or you have to go small. You can't get stuck in the middle, right? So if you're going to do something like nuclear power, which is actually a very big thing in this country, you're going to have to say, this is where it's going to be built. This is how much it's going to be cost. This is the model that we're going to use. This is what the community thinks about it. Here's the safety work that we've done on it. Here's all of this. Here's how the waste is going to be stored. You have a 500-page...
And here's how it will bring down your power prices.
You have a 500-page document telling people every single nook and cranny of it. Otherwise, you will lose control of the debate. If you're not willing to do that, you shouldn't take it to the electorate. But that's what the coalition did. They just said, we're going to have 7 nuclear power stations in these communities, but we haven't talked to them yet. We don't know how we're going to get it built. We don't
know whether state governments will let us do it.
No, and the technology they were talking about doesn't exist. So that's the problem. The same with the debt. So in Victoria, they're saying we're going to cut the debt. People, how?
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
What will you cut?
We'll have a commission.
What taxes will you raise? What services will you cut?
Yeah, we'll have a commission. Well, what's the commission going to say? Right? You're going to have to tell people, if you're going to go big on something, you say debt is the number one issue facing and we're going to go big on it. Okay. At some point, you're going to have to spell it out to people what you're going to do. If you're not willing to do that, you shouldn't bring it up as an issue.
Well, the survey results are interesting on nuclear power because people were asked, did they support or oppose nuclear power? 38% said they support, 37% said they oppose. So the nuclear power argument was there to be won or lost, and it was lost. Yes. Interestingly, I mentioned that climate change didn't rank very high on the perceptions or concerns of voters. Respondents were asked, and again, we can go back to previous elections and compare results. How serious do you regard the threat of climate change? So only 6 years ago, 68% of Australians...
I was going to bring this one up. What
do you want to save it?
No, you
want to go?
No, you go.
All right.
I'm excited.
Yeah, this is a good one.
I like this one. I was waiting for you in case you weren't going to say it.
Of course I was going to. It's climate change.
Well, immigration is my favourite, but this is the second favourite.
So climate change in 2019, 68% of respondents said that the threat of climate change was serious.
So Labor must have won that election then.
No.
Oh, that's right. Morrison won it. And he won it on building more coal stations.
Yeah, and how electric cars don't work.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting, isn't it?
Funny that in 2025, so 6 more years of advertising, of propaganda, of information about the existential climate emergency. 6 years on, that number of people who believe climate change is a serious threat has fallen to 57%.
Wow.
Still more than half, but it's falling.
So 57-43.
Yeah, very interestingly. Well, you've given away the number. Well, I mean, if you take...
Sorry.
Yeah, if you take...
Was that the punchline?
Yeah, if you take 57 from 100, you do get a number.
I thought we were moving on.
I was saving it up.
I want to let people know it has a 4 in front of it.
It's got a 4 in front.
Yeah.
Oh, you do it then.
Oh, I've done it now.
All right, sorry. 43% of people...
I thought you were moving on. I thought you were going to miss out on the...
No, that was the punchline.
So 43% of Australians do not believe
that climate change is a serious threat.
Despite the fact that we've never had more propaganda telling us the opposite.
Yeah, you've wrecked it now.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
Okay.
But I want to go back to the 2019 election because doesn't it go to show that even if people think issue X is a really, really big deal and your opponent is considered to be the party that is preferred to handle issue X, that doesn't mean that you then simply copy your opponent's policy. What it means is you do the exact opposite, because then what people think is you're standing on principle.
That's right.
You say, yep, I'll put my hand up. I know that this is a popular issue, but I'm going to do what's right for the country. And people see you as a leader. Otherwise, they see you as a follower and they say, well, why are you trying to be Prime Minister if you're going to be a follower? The whole point is to be a leader.
Exactly. So this is, I don't think that the survey tells us a lot we didn't already know or didn't already suspect. As I said, one of the arguments is that it's demonstrating supposedly that young people are not shifting to the right as they grow older. Again, I'm not sure that's exactly correct. I think it relates to bigger questions around expectations of government, around the idea that we have changed the economic incentives and political incentives for how people vote. And again, I come back to The Voice, where we demonstrated that, for example, a majority of young men voted no, and that for as long as the coalition only ever attempts to talk about economics, and when it does, it simply replicates or matches what Labor does, then it's going to go further behind. And the question about how the Liberal Party gets back the mantle of most responsible economic managers is going to be very difficult indeed, because in the current environment you can't simply get that back by saying we will cut government spending and reduce taxes.
Yeah. Well, the other problem is they're living with the legacy of COVID.
That's right.
We were saying at the time, among many other reasons why the response to COVID was terrible, but that also it's going to trash the coalition's perception in the community as being competent economic managers, because most of the debt that's been run up has been run up by the coalition. So how can you complain about debt and spending when you spent more than ever before? You refuse to take the fight to state premiers, such as Daniel Andrews. Actually, Frydenberg and Morrison gave Daniel Andrews billions of dollars to lock down his state.
To keep Victoria locked down longer.
Yeah, and then why don't people trust us on the economy anymore? Really? Like, these things have long-term consequences. And I think all of those MPs who capitulated because they were too scared, they own this issue. It wasn't just Dutton's loss, it was their loss as well. The other point that you raised that I thought was interesting was about campaigning, and it's kind of like the barbell. So it was digital and in person, which was very much my experience as a candidate, which you can waste a ton of time. But what you want to do is you want to have really intense in-person interaction, because so few people ever meet a politician. So when they actually meet one, they go, oh, it's kind of like
they might remember you.
Yeah. And you want to have digital to tell everybody about it. That's basically the barbell strategy that you need to have. And it is interesting that the sort of in-person campaigning is coming back. Like, people really like it.
It's authentic.
Yeah. And even if they don't go, say you have a
rally,
a meeting or a rally, they might not go, but they like the fact that you've actually done it as well. So I think a lot of politicians waste their time with in-between sort of group events. You want direct personal contact, or you want just to go big on digital. So I found that.
And then you want to really engage authentically.
Yeah. You mentioned your best friend, Niki Savva, before, and it piqued my interest.
I don't think I used that term.
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't know. I might have seen it once years ago.
It was a subjective evaluation.
It was, yeah.
You've taken one for the team.
I have.
You've read her book, so that.
Yeah. So our what have I read? What have I listened to? What have I watched? Segment.
I thought it was a book about climate change when I saw Earthquake.
Yeah, they probably do cause earthquakes too. Is Niki Savva's new book, Earthquake, the story of the 2025 federal election, subtitled The Election That Shook Australia. And this falls into the category of those books that I've read so that you don't have to. It's interesting. So it's about, 450 odd pages.
A few pictures.
A few pictures. There's a little bit of misinformation. There's actually a lot. But the first half of it is actually the collection of her published articles in The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald that go back, I think, to 2022. And then the second half is her analysis and discussion of the 2025 election. The first half is interesting. I had read many of the columns originally, but it is interesting to look back about how someone like Niki Savva, who doesn't really take a bigger perspective than that adopted by the Canberra Press Gallery as a whole. She's a favourite ABC Insiders. It's an interesting book because it represents mainstream left-leaning Canberra Press Gallery attitudes and values. You look back to her pieces from 2022, 23, and it's clear that after the loss of The Voice, the Labor government was clearly concerned about its future. and the opportunity was there for Dutton to maybe not win the election, but get a lot closer than he did, and do better than the 43 compared to the 94 seats that Labor eventually won. But it's clear that every opportunity Dutton missed. She talks and she has her favourite people that she's discussed Dutton with, basically the Teals and the moderate side of the Liberal Party. She talks about the fact, and I think this is true, that Dutton over his career had relatively little interest in political theory, in policy. He didn't often talk about philosophy. That in person he could be quite charming, but he was also quite insular, protective of himself and his staff, not open and consultative, and that cost him a lot in the campaign, as policies weren't written, they weren't developed. There were a whole lot of things that happened in a very haphazard manner. A lot of things that we know, and as we were just talking about in the AES survey, the public, I think, completely understood as well. The second half of the book, for me, was striking for a number of reasons, but there was one that really hit home. The influence of identity politics on Australia at the moment, the influence of segments of society on discussion about policy. So it happens in a minor sense when Niki Savva says, well, Labor shouldn't have sacked Mark Dreyfus as Attorney General because he was Jewish. Labor shouldn't have removed Ed Husic as a minister because he was Muslim. So you're starting to get a perspective accepted by people like Niki Savva that our politicians, our public, should be defined by their religion, by their ethnicity. And this is the path of Europe. At a more fundamental level, she talks about social cohesion. And she doesn't go into it in great depth, but she talks about how the coalition was criticised for talking about the Middle East conflict and taking a view on Gaza. And ASIO, the head of ASIO, said, well, it's difficult to do that because you will inflame community tensions. She says significantly in relation to Australia's immigration policy that it is going to affect our foreign policy. So Scott Morrison, of course, talked correctly about the potential for the lab leak thesis and the Chinese government to have covered up the origins of COVID. That was then demonised by the Labor Party as a perceived attack on China and a perceived attack on Australians of Chinese ancestry. And Savva says this significantly in relation to the 2025 election. Labor believed that opposition criticism of China was seen by Chinese Australians as criticism of them. This raises really important questions about how Australia can undertake a foreign policy discussion sensitively and carefully without risking a domestic political backlash.
Well, I don't think she understands how. She's sort of built the cat. That was sort of buried in there as well. 300 and something. Yeah. So that's a very significant revelation. And she would know what Labor people think because that's who.
Well, she wrote it, yeah.
That we can't criticise a potentially hostile foreign power because of how that might affect an election outcome.
And she talks about how, in relation to Chinese Australians, that invariably they swung towards the Labor Party and it cost the Liberals a swag of seats. So in Melbourne, for example, it cost them or contributed to the loss of Deakin and Menzies. She talks a lot about her broad thesis is, again, as we've just mentioned, completely disproved by public perception of what the Liberal Party is. She talks a lot about how Dutton moved the party to the right, how the Liberal Party is too conservative, how it doesn't represent modern Australia. But nowhere does she actually interrogate what modern Australia is. And as we've discussed on the mainstream many times, modern Australia likes the flag. Modern Australia rejected the voice. Modern Australia thinks immigration should be reduced. She doesn't examine any of that. She's barracking for the Teals. She's barracking for moderate Liberals. She has a great line in here, which is that Tony Abbott did great damage to the Liberal Party
by winning.
Yeah. Nowhere does she, and I just had to remind myself of these numbers, nowhere does she talk about that, the alleged damage of Tony Abbott to the Liberal Party was him winning 26 seats over 2 elections. And again, let's just remind ourselves, in 2013, Tony Abbott won 90 seats for the Coalition. The Coalition now has 43 seats. So for me, there are a couple of insights. We know how dysfunctional Peter Dutton's office was and how dysfunctional the campaign was. There is a view by some of his supporters that it was a Trump effect. I'm not sure about that. There was a view that Trump represented chaos, uncertainty, and that Dutton and the Liberals were perceived to be too close to Trump, and this somehow affected the election result. There's quite a few pages blaming Jacinda Price for saying "Make Australia Great Again." I think that is a ridiculous criticism, and if you can't say "Make Australia Great Again," then the country has come to the end of the road anyway. And again, that's not necessary. That view of what cost Dutton the election isn't reflected in the AES survey. But for me, the book is, it might be actually something that you take to the beach as a little bit of news.
You don't strike me as a beach goer.
No, I'm not.
No.
No. I'd throw this in the waves. And the sand gets everywhere. Why do we go to the beach when God gave us brass? But that said, it's a really interesting insight into the mindset of the sort of people who think that the Liberal Party should be something much closer to the Labor Party. And nowhere in the 450-page book is there a discussion that if the Liberal Party or the Conservative side of politics, let's leave the Liberal Party aside, Conservative side of politics moves to the left, Niki Savva doesn't say, well, how then they would be any different from the Labor Party, how anyone would vote for the Liberal Party if the Liberal Party was even more like the Labor Party than it already is.
When you talk about how Niki Savva alleges that worse the effect of the coalition was too right-wing and Dutton was too right-wing.
Yeah. And she says it, and she quotes on and off the record lots of left-wing Liberals saying that.
Okay. Is there evidence that's given of that? Well, so, the coalition, the Liberal Party was too right-wing because of its position on net zero or immigration or the flag. Is there evidence of that in terms of what Peter Dutton did or didn't do? Or is it just people quoting other people?
Well, it's people quoting other people. They can't explain any causation between Peter Dutton being too right-wing. They don't talk about these examples of Peter Dutton being all that right-wing. There's one, and again, this reflects, I think, Peter Dutton's philosophical confusion sometimes. When there were Welcome to Country was heckled at the Remembrance Day ceremony, I think it was here in Melbourne, he came out and criticised it was Anzac Day. Anzac Day, not Remembrance Day. Anzac Day, he criticised the heckling. Then he reversed his opinion because I think he reflected his true self, which was, Anzac Day is a special day. Leave it at that to remember what happened. And he was then criticised for being too right-wing.
Because he opposed the Welcome to Country.
Yeah, because he was criticised for not then criticising enough those who heckled Anzac Day Welcome to Country.
Yeah, well, you can have both views, can't you?
Well, you can. So, this reveals the confused thinking that I think is reflected in a lot of the Canberra press gallery, but it does speak to the pressures that the Liberal Party has to operate under. And again, modern Australia is in fact, or would have been, I would argue, a lot more comfortable with a Dutton-led coalition government actually reflecting mainstream views and values.
I certainly agree with that.
So are you taking it to the beach?
No, you've done a service to the community, John, so I don't have to read the book now. So you've sent me a few clippings of the relevant pages that I have read, but I don't feel the need to read 200 pages of old articles that Niki Savva wrote because she couldn't fill a 400-page book.
Well, I mean, it is, well, that is true, but it is also nice talking about, there's some lines about how it would be the height of irresponsibility for the coalition to go against not just, here we are, I found it. It's funny because I've underlined it and I've read this bit many, many times. So this article was written in March 2023. The referendum, of course, was October. So this was when there was still hope that the Voice would win. And she says, it would be peak arrogance for the coalition to insist on a no vote in the face of overwhelming support for the Yes campaign. Right. So she doesn't say people should vote yes on principle. She says people should vote yes and the coalitions should support yes because religious, business, ethnic, sporting, community groups and the remaining two Liberal state governments all support yes. And then she goes on, according to one leading moderate, it would be pretty offensive if Dutton said no because he feared upsetting his Conservative base or wanted to dog whistle to an ageing, declining membership. Well, that ageing, declining membership, of course, reflected the views of 60% of Australians. And again, as we know, more Australians born overseas, more Australians born to first-generation migrants voted no than voted yes, because no one comes to this country to be different from the rest of us as Australians.
My favourite term, John, dog whistle. What do we say about dog whistles, John?
You go.
Only dogs.
You wrecked my line once, so I won't let you wreck it again.
Only dogs can hear them. You know what else I love, John?
Go on.
Steve Smith. Cricket captain.
Cheat.
Winner. 2 wins. I'm watching the cricket again because Pat Cummins, that terrible woke ideologue, is not captain at the moment because he's injured. 2 wins to Steve Smith. He's singing the anthem. No wokeness in the dressing room. Steve Smith should stay on as captain for the rest of the series.
So,
do you agree? Or do you want Mr. Woke or do you want Mr. Patriot Steve Smith?
I'd go Trav. I don't know what political opinions Travis Head has, so I'd go with him. But for me, the choice between a woke cricketer and a cheating cricketer is not wonderful to behold.
But if you had to choose, which one would it be?
Neither. Bring back Shane Warne.
Yeah. Come on, you got to get around Smith. You'll get there.
Maybe.
You'll get there. All right. Well, maybe next time we'll see where you land on that when we're 3-0 up.
It's wonderful. You want me to be excited about the cricket until Warne comes back or DK Lilly puts on the flannels again. Cricket may have lost me. I'm saving myself for the BBL.
BBL, yeah. I'm over the BBL. Too much.
No, you can't have too much of a good thing.
Yeah. All right, John, we'll leave it there. We'll chat in a fortnight.